Welcome to APJ Pathshala. I am Suchandra Ghosh, Professor, Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture, University of Calcutta. The subject is Indian culture and the paper is Indian epigraphy. Today we will be discussing the three inscriptions, one of Besnagar pillar inscription of Heliodorus, Ayodhya inscription of Dhanadeva and Mathura inscription of Huvishk of the year 28. These three inscriptions belong to three different dynasties and they have been compiled together. The rationale behind this is that they belong to a period which begins from late 2nd century BC to 2nd century CE, which is also known as the post-Mauryan period in Indian history. Among these three inscriptions, two of them are connected to the Shunga dynasty. But these three inscriptions are of three distinct genres. Content-wise also they are different. We shall begin with the Besnagar pillar inscription of Heliodorus. The three inscriptions that we will do are Besnagar pillar inscription of Heliodorus, Ayodhya inscription of Dhanadeva and the Mathura inscription of Huvishk dated to the year 28. So let us start with the Besnagar pillar inscription. What we find is that after the downfall and decline of the Mauryan Empire by 187 or 185 BCE, the Shungas came to power under the rule of Pushyamitra Shunga. Now different texts talk about the Shunga, that the incursion of the Bactrian Greeks in the Shunga territory. We have Patanjali's Mahabhashya, which can be dated to 150 BCE, which talks about the incursions of the Bactrian Greeks. And they are known in Indian sources as the Yavanas. Even after Patanjali, we have Malavika Agnimitram of Kalidasa, which also talks about these incursions. Patanjali, while giving an idea about a grammar, he says Arunat Yavana Saketam, Arunat Yavana Madhyamikam, which means that the Yavanas had come to these places in recent past. Therefore, we can say that it was probably during the time of Menander that the incursions of the Yavanas happened in the Shunga territory. Moreover, from the Malavika Agnimitram, we know that the horse of Pushyamitra was stopped by the Yavanas and his grandson Vashumitra was able to defeat the Yavanas. In this background of rivalry between the Indo-Greeks and the Shungas, the Besnagar pillar inscription indicates a transition to cordial relation between the two powers. It is an interesting inscription of the Shunga period which is inscribed on a pillar at Besnagar, which is in the Bhilsa district of Madhya Pradesh, the site of ancient Vidisha. You can see here the column which has a Garura Dhwaja, which means the capital has the emblem of a Garura. The language of the inscription is Central Western epigraphic Prakrit with some Sanskritic spellings. The script is Brahmi of the Shunga period and it consists of 6 lines. So you can see that these are very short inscriptions. The date is given in the inscription as 14th regnal year of the ruler King Kasiputra Bhagavadra. So we can place it perhaps in the late 2nd century BCE. The purpose of the inscription is to record the setting of this pillar, a Garura Dhwaja, that is a column with its capital adorned by the figure of Garura in honor of Lord Vasudeva by Heliodorus, son of Dion, an ambassador of the king of Taxila, whose name was Antilochidus, to the court of King Kasiputra Bhagavadra. If you look at this map, you can see the territory that the Shungas occupied, and on the northwest it was the Indo-Greek territories. So the Shungas actually had quite a lot of area within their control in North India, Ganga Valley and of course in Central India. You can see the location of Vidisha in the present day Madhya Pradesh region. where we have the column. This is a closer view of the column, and the history of the pillar is written in a block of stone in the column. If you go there, then you can see this by yourself. Beside the column, some remnants of structures have been found, which shows that there was perhaps a temple. So these kind of structures are strewn around from nearby the column was established. Now what does the inscription actually tell us? The inscription says that this Garuda pillar of Vasudeva, the god of gods, was constructed by Heliodorus, which I mentioned earlier, that he was the Bhagavata, son of Dion of Takshashila, the Greek ambassador who came from the great king Antalcidas and Chalcidas, to the king Kashiputra Bhagavadra, the savior, prospering in his 14th year. The term used is Tratarasa. And there is the other side of the pillar, which has a short inscription translated as follows. These are 3 steps to immortality, when correctly followed, lead to heaven. One is control, generosity, and attention. Now, a look at the inscriptions would give us some interesting historical data which we can reconstruct, and we need to use them for reconstructing the history of the period. So the Besnagar pillar inscription indicates that the Shungas continued the tradition of the Mauryas of inviting Greek ambassadors into their kingdom. And this demonstrates a kind of friendship between the two. We were aware of King Antalcidas from his coins. This inscription further proves that his presence was in Taxila as the ruler of Taxila. Kashiputra Bhagavadra was the 5th ruler of the Shunga dynasty, and he can probably be identified with Bhadraka of the Puranas. It is interesting to note the titles used in the inscription. We have the use of the title Maharaja for Antalcidas. For Bhagavadra, the title Rayo is used, and the use of the title Tratarasa is very significant because it is the Prakrit form of the term Soteros, which comes from Soter and which has been used in the Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek coins. Now, since the inscription was made to be written by the Greek Heliodorus, so he used the same title for the Shunga ruler Kasiputra Bhagavadra. This inscription has a strong religious importance. This was the time when the newly emerging Bhagavata sect, whose beliefs and practices facilitated the process of acculturation. These trends isolated Vedic Brahmanism as a recipient of royal patronage. The Bhagavata sect was open to accepting persons who came from societies which did not have the Varnashrama Dharma, such as the Hellenistic Greeks. And related to this is the silver coins of Agathocles, which has been found from Iconium, which depict the Brahmanical deities Balarama Shankarshana and Vasudeva Krishna, the earliest depictions of these two gods ever attested in India. Shankarshana Balarama is shown holding a mushala, that is a pestle, and a hala, that is a plough, and Vasudeva Krishna holds a chakra, that is the wheel, and a shankha, that is the conch shell. Shankarshan is depicted on the obverse with the legend in Greek, and Vasudeva is represented on the reverse with the legend in Brahmi. This was perhaps the reason because during this time Shankarshana was the leader of the Panchavira sect, and so he was more important than Vasudeva. You can see here the coins of Agathocles, which we just discussed, and where you have the representation of Vasudeva, Shankarshana on the obverse and Vasudeva on the reverse, and it reads Basilios, Agathocleos and Agathocleos. That Heliodorus was well versed in the Mahabharata also comes out from this inscription. As I have mentioned earlier, in the reverse we have use of three terms. These 3 immortal precepts, Dhamma, Chaga and Apramada, that is self-control, self-denial and watchfulness, mentioned in the second part of his inscription occur in the Mahabharata. So here Heliodorus knew about this, and therefore he thought that to inscribe this on the reverse of the pillar. Thus this inscription highlights the popularity of Vasudeva Krishna, who was worshipped as the god of gods. The term used is Devati Deva in 2nd century BC, which is supported by numismatic data from Afghanistan. Again, now we shall move on to the Ayodhya inscription of Dhanadeva, and you have to look into this map again because Dhanadeva was linked with the Shunga dynasty, probably from his maternal side. The city of Ayodhya was the earliest capital of Koshala, that is Uttara Koshala Janapada. It stood on the river Sarayu, that is modern Ghagra, and has been identified with modern Ayodhya in the Faizabad district of Uttar Pradesh. The early inscribed coins of Ayodhya gives us the names of certain rulers like Dhanadeva, Vishakadeva, Mooladeva, Vayudeva, Naradatta and Shivadatta. It is highly probable that Dhanadeva of the coins is same as the Dharmaraja Kaushakiputra Dhanadeva. Actually, the part where Deva is written is not properly understood because it is broken. But normally scholars think that we can reconstruct this with Deva. He was the king of Koshala, who is mentioned in the Ayodhya inscription as Kosaladhipa. The inscription was first brought to the notice of buff scholars by Babu Jagannath Das Ratnakara of Ayodhya. It is inscribed on a flat of stone slab. Subsequently, it has been studied by G.H. Ojha, K.P. Jaiswal, N.K. Bhattashali, N.G. Majumdar, A. Banerjee Shastri, D.R. Shani, and D.C. Sharkar. Now about the language and script of the inscription. The document is written in correct Sanskrit and is thus one of the few early inscriptions recorded in that language. The script is Brahmi of the 1st century CE, which shows considerable resemblance with the inscriptions of the Northern Kshatrapas. It consists of 2 lines. It's a very short inscription, and as mentioned earlier, it is dated in the 1st century CE. The purpose of the inscription is to record the erection of a shrine or other memorial by him, that is Dhanadeva, in honor of his father Falgudeva. As mentioned earlier, here we find in this inscription that Dhanadeva is represented as the lord of Koshala. The term used is Koshaladhipa. The inscription thus adds a new name to the list of the kings of Koshala known from the coins. Ketana actually was a structure for the accommodation of an image of the deceased or a structure of pillar, Dhwaja Stambha, on the cremation ground in memory of Falgudeva. It is the first inscription on stone or metal which mentions the name of Pushyamitra, the celebrated founder of the Shunga dynasty. So therefore, the historical importance of this small inscription, the short inscription, is immense. He was earlierly known only from the literary sources. Pushyamitra's horse sacrifice is also attested by the Mahabhashya and the Malavika Agnimitram, which also styles him as Shenapati. The title appears to have been popular even after his accession to the throne, as here we find that in this inscription the title Shenapati is given to Pushyamitra. So perhaps he did not take up the title of Raja or Maharaja or any royal title even after becoming a ruler. The Ayodhya inscription records for the performance of 2 Ashwamedhas sacrifices by Pushyamitra. It goes to the credit of Pushyamitra that he revived this sacrifice. Therefore, the importance of the Ayodhya Mitra is that it establishes the fact that the correct name of the founder of the Shunga dynasty was Pushyamitra and not Pushpamitra. Finally, the epithet Koshaladhipa used by Dhanadeva suggests that this inscription was probably inscribed prior to the Kushana foray in the region, for we know from the Rabatak inscription of Kanishka I that his empire included Saketa, which was very much within the domain of Koshaladhipa. The third inscription that we are going to discuss now is the Mathura Brahmi inscription of Huvishka of the year 28. Huvishka was the son of Kanishka, and he is also known as a very important ruler of the dynasty. The chronological framework of the dynasty of the Great Kushans is provided by a series of inscriptions dated in the era of Kanishka. Recent historiography prefers to have Huvishk after Kanishka, though earlier the scholars thought that in between Kanishka and Huvishk, another ruler ruled who was known as Vashishka. Huvishk, as you can see the coin of Huvishk, the obverse. He was a very powerful ruler and famous Kushana monarch, well represented in a large variety of coins and inscriptions. Actually, among the Kushana rulers, the largest varieties of coins were issued both by Kanishka and by Huvishk, and with different kinds of devices. The dates recorded to his inscriptions range from year 28 to 60, indicating a long reign of over 3 decades. Assignable in terms of the Shaka Kanishka era from 106 CE to 138 CE. Huvishka's reign, if we look at the number of inscriptions and the coins, we can understand that it was a period of political security and economic prosperity. This particular inscription is engraved in a pillar and it consists of 13 lines. This has been edited by Stenkono, K.P. Jaiswal, H.K. Deb and D.C. Sharkar. The language of the inscription is Prakrit, which is influenced by Sanskrit, and the script is Brahmi of the Kushana variety. Numerous inscriptions of Mathura were written in this language. The purpose of the inscription is very interesting. It is inscribed to record the endowment of a Punya Shala, that is a hall for acquiring merit through distribution of alms, with an Akshaya Nivi, that is a permanent endowment which could be withdrawn and whose interest which could not be withdrawn and whose interest alone could be enjoyed. The inscription says that in the year 28, on the first day of Gorpiaios, an Eastern, or because the term used is Prachini, so scholars think that Prachini could be either Eastern or it could be Old. Hall of Merit was given a perpetual endowment by the son of Kanasarukamana, the lord of Kharasalera, and an official in charge of the temple who was known as Vakanapati. The endowment is of 550 Puranas in each of the 2 guilds of flower makers, Samitakara, and at another, we don't know exactly the name of the guild because it is broken. From the interest of that endowment, each month 100 Brahmanas should be served in the open hall. Each day, in front of the door of the Hall of Merit, some provisions for the benefit of hungry and thirsty destitutes must be made. These are the 3 adhaka of groats, 1 prastha salt, 1 prastha shaku, 3 ghataka and 5 mallaka of green vegetable bundles. The merit for this should be accrued to the Devaputra Shahi Huvishka and those to whom the Devaputra is dear, and may the merit accrue to the whole world. Now we shall talk about the historical importance of this inscription. In this inscription, we find the use of the Macedonian month Gorpiaios, which is written in Prakrit as Gurappiya. This is in congruence with inscriptions from the northwest. In the inscriptions from the northwest, we find not only references to Indian months named after stars like Kartika, but also to Macedonian or Greek months. These include the Panemas, that is Panemasha, the Artemisius, Artemisia, the Apellius, Apella, the Dionysius, Daishika, the Odanius, Avaduna Kalga. And here in this inscription we have the Gorpiaios, that is Gurappiya. This change in the dating pattern in the northwest commenced during the rule of the Indo-Greeks and continued till the Kushana period. Thus, even in Mathura, use of the Macedonian month continued. It is also apparent that the system was influenced by the pattern of dating familiar to the Greek world. Normally, we find this kind of dating in the Kharoshthi inscriptions that were issued by the Kushanas and even previous to the Kushanas, the Indo-Parthians, the Indo-Scythians. But their use in Brahmi inscriptions is also striking. Apart from this, we have a very strong economic importance of this inscription. This is the referring to the presence of guilds in the Kushana Empire. This inscription talks of the existence of guild of traders, which is known as Sreni. Actually, Srenis were Srenis, Puga, Shangha. These are the terms that we find in the Pali literature used for the guilds, and we find them from the period of the Janapadas only. And during the time of the Kushanas, the Srenis became very important. These actually started functioning as a bank, and here in this inscription we have such an indication. So it records two perpetual endowments, Akshayanivi, that is known as Akshayanivi, in Purana currency, made in two guilds entrusted with the task of performing certain acts out of the interest on the amount. Now, what is an Akshayanivi? An Akshayanivi is a permanent endowment in the sense that it was given on the condition that the principle of the endowment would be maintained in perpetuity, means forever, and the donee could make use of the income accruing from its interest. So, the capital is not given, and it is the interest which the donee continues to use. So there is a kind of a credit system which was prevalent in the functioning of a Sreni. The first inscription reference to this term occurs in the second inscription of the Shaka ruler Usavadata, which records the endowment was placed with two different guilds. Usavadata belonged to the house of Shaharathas of the Western Kshatrapas. In this case, we have seen that the donation is not to a Buddhist Shangha or to the monks, but to the benefit of the Brahmanas. But if you look at the other inscriptions, the vocabulary of this inscription is also the same as seen as the Buddhist donations. Donation to the guild of Samitakaras. Samitakaras are wheat flour dealers, indicates the importance of the profession. We have such names, a list of such names in the Mahavastu, where also the name of Samitakara is present. Apart from that, there was another guild. The name cannot be read, but it must only the Kara portion could be read. So it must be also another very important guild whom money was being given. The entrusting of a substantial amount of money with these guilds speaks of their economic stability. Another interesting monetary term is here the use of Puranas instead of the dinara, which was the Kushana common gold currency. So the Purana coins mentioned in this inscription could have been either indigenous silver coins struck officially or unofficially in pre-Kushana period, or even silver princes minted locally or unofficially in the Kushana period itself. We have reference to Ardhaka and Prastha as measuring unit. From this term Ardhaka only, we have later the term called Arhabapa. A Prastha is usually 1/4 of an Ardhaka, though we have to remember that the measurements differed in early India from region to region. So normally it was 1/4 of an Araka, but it could change in some other places also. Thus, it is evident that the Mathura inscription, even though it is a short inscription of the year 28, in spite of it consists only of 13 lines, throw ample evidence on the economy of the period by referring to the guild-like activities, perpetual endowment, and the concept of interest within the general notion of donative records which one inscribes or gets inscribed for accruing merit. So thus what we find is that when we look at these three inscriptions of three different genres, it appears that within the post-Mauryan period, which was a very vibrant period of early India, we have the presence of the guilds, which were functioning not even as a bank. Then we have this kind of religious pluralism, where we know that a Greek who is a Hellenic person was transformed into a Bhagavata, and then he was offering donation, offering his a column in the name of Deva Vasudeva, and in the Ayodhya inscription we have the reference to Kosaladhipa Dhanadeva, who was also related to the Mushunga ruler Pushyamitra Sunga, and this inscription actually the earliest inscription which gives us the evidence of presence of Pushyamitra Sunga. So taken together as a whole, these inscriptions offer us immense information on the period of between the late 2nd century BCE and 2nd century CE. Thank you.